case has gained national attention, and we're not anywhere near the end game with this. Joining us now to talk about this attack and the legal ramifications and where we stand is CNN legal analyst, former New York City homicide prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, Paul Callan. Hello, sir.
Nice being with you,
Steve. Good to see you. I always love when you're in the studio with us. All right, so we just had the arrest, the fourth arrest in connection with this case, and he is a guy with a long list of arrests, and he gave two middle fingers to the crowd, if you will, outside the courtroom. This whole thing happened September 29th. A group of motorcyclists crossed paths with a SUV driver, Alexian Lean, who was out for a drive to celebrate his wedding anniversary with his wife, their toddler. One biker, Christopher Cruz, cut off Lean's Range Rover SUV, slowed down before it bumped into his motorcycle rear tire, and then the driver got nervous. He sped away. In the process, he ran over one biker who's now paralyzed. They tracked this guy down. They trapped him. They beat the helmet against the windshield, dragged him out, and beat him to a pulp. This is insane. In my view, the driver's totally innocent. And let's start with that.
Well, he looks totally innocent to me on the facts as I've seen it. The claim, by the way, by one of the guys who was seriously injured, he was run over by the Range Rover that was driven by the victim, and he's got a fractured spine and fractured legs, and I think Gloria Allred, the famed California attorney, is flying in to represent him.
Yes, she's already flown in to represent it. Edwin Mises Jr., yes.
Now, he's claiming that he basically was trying to defuse the situation and that he was an innocent victim. Now, by the way, that may very well be true. I've looked at the pictures. He's run over by the Range Rover as the victim is trying to get away, and he may very well have not been involved, but that doesn't mean that he has a case against the driver of the Range Rover. The guy's got a right to try to flee. His wife and kid are in the car, and if somebody's attacking you, you can flee, and if somebody gets hurt, well, that's just what happens.
Well, so here's the thing. First of all, this group of motorcyclists claim they're not a gang. They're just like arbitrary motorcyclists who gathered downtown or in Midtown Manhattan earlier, and then they were headed back.
Hollywood stunts.
Hollywood stunts, and they wanted
what they call themselves.
Apparently, they wanted to do on the West Side Highway. They wanted to slow the traffic down or stop it, and which is apparently what they were trying to do with this SUV, pull them over so they could do wheelies and stunts on the West Side Highway. At one point, early in this video, before the beating portion of it, before he got away, they opened the back door of the SUV, and nobody really talks about that. And I saw it over and over again. I said, yeah, his door was open, and then someone from inside pulled it shut, and he tore out.
Right.
So, of course, you're going to tear out if they're opening your door.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this, I've seen these motorcyclists do the wheelies on highways around New York. It's not uncommon. What's uncommon here was they were literally trying to close down a major highway, the West Side Highway, and when he wouldn't go along with that, they tried to slow him down, trap him, and then, of course, he became fearful, apparently, for the life of his wife and child, and tried to flee. He ends up bumping another motorcyclist and hurting somebody else, and mayhem ensued.
All right. So talk about first of all, there's these people could all be tried, these motorcyclists, under a gang statute in New York City.
Yeah, they can, and that's where the lawyers will find an interesting issue here, because these guys are saying, hey, we're not Hell's Angels. We're just a bunch of guys who like to ride motorcycles on the weekend, much like guys who like to play softball in a park. And we found ourselves in this situation where this guy in the Range Rover had bumped into one of our fellow riders, and he was trying to escape. So we pursued him. Now, if you pursue somebody who's trying to escape the scene of an accident, usually nobody would be critical of that. So this is the kind of defense that they're putting together.
Of course, then they smashed his windshield out, took him out, and beat him to a pulp.
Well, yes, they did.
Yeah.
And they, they took their helmet off, smashed the window. Everybody's seen the video.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, one of the guys was charged with possession of a weapon, the helmet, which is a pretty unusual weapon. Only in New York City is a weapon, a helmet.
True. Well, depending on what you do with it. But
under New York law, statutes were put on the books to protect people from gang warfare. And we're looking at Hell's Angels and the Crips and the Bloods. And if you're involved in an assault and you're acting in concert with another gang member, it ups the ante. you can do as much as 5 to 25 years in prison if you're found to be part of a gang.
All right, gang definition.
Well,
could it be just a bunch of guys, like-minded people, in this case motorcycle enthusiasts, who form and gather together arbitrarily without membership and dues and names on their backs, and then do what they did? Is that a gang?
Yeah, it absolutely can be. And I was surprised, Steve, because I went back to look at the statute. It's just 2 or more people acting together in an assault. And if I'll put you back on the softball field on the weekend with your kids. If the 2 coaches get into a fight and the team jumps into the fight,
that's a gang.
That's a gang. Theoretically, they could be charged as well. Now, prosecutors aren't going to charge them, but they could under the New York statute. And clearly, where you have motorcyclists surrounding a vehicle on an open highway, that kind of does fit our normal definition of a gang.
And by the way, we should mention that according to the London Daily Mail online, this guy Mises, who Gloria Allred is representing, and who was tragically, paralyzed. This guy Mises, who Gloria Allred is representing, and who was tragically, paralyzed. He also never applied for a motorcycle license, and records show that in June he was named a habitual offender, and his right to drive in the state of Massachusetts, I guess, was revoked until 2017, and it's not clear if he had been licensed in any other state. Now, again, it is a tragedy that he was run over and he's paralyzed, but I mean, this is no pun intended, angel here.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
Guardian or Hells or any other.
I'm going to tell you something that's going to really surprise you. When Gloria Allred rides in on her white horse from California,
maybe a motorcycle,
to sue this guy to try to collect money,
right,
to sue the owner
driver
of the Range
of the
Rover.
SUV, yeah.
A lot of that's never going to come out in the civil trial. All of that stuff won't be relevant.
Yeah.
The only thing that'll be relevant was, did the guy in the Range Rover have a good reason for driving off fast when he accidentally runs him over?
And
that's the only thing.
And I can't imagine a juror saying no. Now, we're talking to Paul Callan, CNN legal analyst here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Now, the wild card here, not that it, and maybe I'll ask you, will it affect how these people who have been charged and held on bail are viewed? You had now up to 5 off-duty NYP officers on motorcycles involved in that quote-unquote gang. Now, not to say that they didn't participate in the beating. At least one of them is claimed to be undercover. None of them called 911. None of them tried to stop it. None of them came forward until days later. What is that?
Well, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? But I have to tell you, under the criminal law, those cops can't be charged with anything because the law doesn't require you to come to the aid of somebody else who's even being criminally assaulted. So they're not going to be subject to criminal charges based on that. They will, however, face the possibility of departmental charges lodged by NYPD if they were found to have acted improperly. And I will say the undercover, at least, who, well, by the way, one of them says he was an undercover cop, not in this gang, in unrelated investigations, and he didn't want to reveal his cover, which is why he didn't step forward. He also said through a spokesman that it happened so fast that he wasn't really in a position to act. Now, there's truth to that. If you see how fast that assault happened,
right.
It's hard to believe.
Depending on where he was, if he wasn't up front there.
Right, if he was far enough away.
But how does this, I'm sorry, but how does this affect maybe a defense of these guys who've been arrested? Hey, there were cops there, they didn't do anything.
Well, I think it's going to go to the issue of, is this really a gang? You get in front of a jury in New York, a lot of people are going to say, hey, these guys are being singled out because they're city guys and they like to ride motorcycles. If they were, out in the suburbs someplace, nothing would happen. And they're going to say, even cops belong to this group, this club. It's not going to be a gang, it's going to be a club, an organization of cops belong to this group, this club. It's not going to be a gang, it's going to be a club, an organization of riders. So they'll use that as a defense to get it out of the gang statute, which really puts these guys in prison for a long time.
It is a horrific case, and that victim is just a victim of circumstance.
Yeah. The thing is, you call 911 right away, or have your wife do it if she's in the next seat, and make sure your doors are locked. That was a big mistake that he made. His doors were not locked, and they were able to drag him out and injure him.
Very big mistake. Paul, always a pleasure to see you
and nice
gain your expertise. We'll watch you on CNN. CNN legal analyst Paul Callan, former New York City homicide prosecutor and criminal defense attorney. Folks, if you want to weigh in on this. I'd love to hear your take on it. We'll discuss it. Is this driver of the SUV in the right? Did he do the right thing to protect himself and his family? What about the off-duty cops? And what about those who have been charged? And what about Gloria Allred's client who was unfortunately paralyzed? Does he have a case against the driver of the SUV? A lot of questions. 855-777-9660. 855-777-9660. Steve Malzberg on the very aptly named Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax TV and radio.